Is that a different one?
Yeah, it's a new one we logged on.
Okay, there we go.
You have to sign it.
Matt, could you come down again?
Call this regular meeting of council, Town of Oliver, Monday, September 21st. Call this meeting to order. Are there any late items to add to the agenda?
There are no late items, Your Worship.
Thank you. I get a motion to adopt the agenda as circulated.
So moved.
Moved and second. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. I have nothing to rise and report on this evening. Adoption of prior minutes. Adoption of September 8th, 2020 regular open council meeting minutes. Can I get a mover to adopt those minutes? Moved, Councillor Grace. Seconded, Councillor Schwarzenberger. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Committee reports. September 8th, 2020, Committee of the Whole meeting minutes for receipt. Can I get a mover to receive those? Councillor Mattis, seconded Councillor Schwarzenberger. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. And I'll give as I chaired the Committee of the Whole meeting, I'll give a report on that. We had a motion to request a delegation from Desert Sun Consulting to come and give us and have a discussion on the resources and needs to support supportive housing in Oliver. We received an update on the strategic plan, the first and second quarter of 2020. October 6th was, after some information from the Director of Operations, we're going to stay with October 6th as the irrigation shutoff date. Fire Chief Bob Graham was here to give us an update and a report on the fire department. A couple highlights from that. There's 34 members, 34 volunteer members, 50% of those members have more than 5 years of experience. There's 4 new recruits that have been added this spring. A new water tender will be available this fall. The command vehicle was purchased earlier this year and is in service. The fire department did assist with the Christie Mountain Fire earlier this year. For our fire department in Oliver, average call response time is 7 minutes and 16 responders on average responding to every call. There's COVID protocols in place, and one of the unique training that's being undertaken with the fire department is on submerged vehicles, and that's on their training facility out by the airport. The last item for discussion was on Packing House Lane. Council has initiated a public consultation process, a web-based process on a couple different options. One option to close Packing House Lane and the other option to keep Packing House Lane open but reduce access to Co-op Avenue. That concludes my report on the Committee of the Whole meeting. We'll move to water matters. And the first item is the Christmas closure policy. I'll pass this over to the corporate officer whose report's attached.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Christmas closure policy that is amended is before Council for your consideration. Back in March 23rd, 2020, Council began the review of their Council policies, and they reviewed the Christmas closure policy as part of their review. Council recommended the policy be updated and remove the reference to Parks and Recreation. The Christmas closure policy has been updated following the policy template, and reference to Parks and Recreation has been removed. Additionally, item D has been removed from the policy, as this is just normal operating processes by the Finance Department respecting tax and utility payments. The implementations of the closure policy, the policy has been in effect since 1996, and it is quite common practice for businesses and surrounding municipalities. For example, the Regional District have closed their doors for a number of years. The City of Penticton has closed their doors, but recently adopted a policy as well, as they were experiencing some challenges in determining hours and operation during the Christmas period. Following our policy and the current practice, we do advertise in the local newspaper and place that information on our website and social media, and that'll happen at least 10 days prior to the closure. The CFO did provide some information that during our closure, the estimated salary savings during this closure is estimated at about $28,000. So the options before council are to adopt the amended Christmas closure policy. You may refer it back to staff for additional information, or you may resolve to continue following the current Christmas closure policy. And the recommendation before council is that council adopt the amended Christmas closure policy.
Thank you. Thank you, Corporate Officer. Any questions, comments, Council? Can I get a mover to adopt the motion?
I move.
Councillor Schwarzenberger,
I'll move the recommendation.
moved. Second.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Are you online, Councillor Ventimiglia, just to make sure?
Councillor Ventimiglia is online.
Okay. No further discussion. I'll call the question. Those in favor?
Is she talking? Oh, just a second.
Opposed? Motion carries.
No, she's muted herself.
Moving to item 2, respect in workplace policy. Corporate Officer has a report attached.
Thank you, Your Worship. The respect in the workplace policy is before council to seek your consideration to adopt a new respect in the workplace policy and rescind the existing policy dated April 26, 2010. As a bit of a background again, this was part of council's council policy review at the May 25th, 2020 meeting. The policy was reviewed, and council did comment that maybe consideration be given to amend the policy as an administrative policy. As part of the review policy process, the policy has been rewritten to meet WorkSafe BC guidelines in providing a respectful working environment. The purpose of the policy is to promote respect for the dignity of all employees, elected officials, volunteers, residents, and customers. And with this in mind, the policy should remain as a council policy. The policy following the WorkSafe BC guidelines outlines responsibilities for the employer, the worker, and their supervisor. If an individual considers that they've been subjected to bullying, harassment, or discrimination procedures, there is a process to report the initial incident and further steps on how to report and to who. Discipline procedures are outlined for employees, volunteers, and our committee members, residents, and council. To ensure that managers and supervisors has the skills to prevent and properly respond to reports of workplace bullying and harassment, provision is made for all supervisory staff to attend an appropriate education session, and this will be conducted by our occupational health and safety consultant, and those are actually coordinated for next week. The policy is to be reviewed annually, and all workers and users of the policy will be provided a copy. We'll introduce the policy to council, committee members, and all our volunteers. The policy, I said, okay, never mind. Yep. So the recommendation before council is that you may rescind the existing respect in the workplace policy and adopt the new respect in the workplace policy. Council may refer back to staff for additional information, or you may resolve to continue following the current respect in the workplace policy. The recommendation before council is that council rescind the former respect in the workplace policy dated April 26, 2010, and that council adopt the new respect in the workplace policy. Thank you.
Comments, questions, Council? Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. The question would be through to staff. What changes did we have to make in order to meet the WCB standard?
It was with respect to reporting. Our policy was determined not to have specific processes on how a staff member or other member to report in an incident.
Thank you.
Councillor Schwarzenberger.
I have no questions, but I'll just move the recommendation.
Moved.
Second.
Seconded. Councillor Mattis. Any further discussion, comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Anything to report this evening, Councillor Machial?
Lots of work,
Lots of work.
lots of work, lots of hours,
Okay.
apples.
lots of apples, millions.
We have a delegation this evening, BC Step Code presentation. Peter Robinson from the Community Energy Association is here, and I'll invite Mr. Robinson up to the podium and give us your presentation.
Great,
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, thank you. May I remove my mask?
Yes.
Is that- Okay, wonderful, thank you, that feels better. Okay, so let's just see if this advances. Should I?
Oh, we have to open it up.
Oh, you have to open up the PowerPoint, okay. And can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Fantastic,
Yep.
okay. Great, so yeah, might as well just get started on some of the initial stuff. So yeah, I'm Peter Robinson, I'm the Chief Technology Officer with the Community Energy Association. We're a non-profit organization, a registered charity. We've been going for 25 years now. We started as the UBCM, as their Energy Aware Committee, and we were spun off from UBCM in 2003. And I've been with the organization for 12 years now. So quite some time, and I live in Kelowna. And so I'm going to be presenting this evening on, well, a couple of things, the Partners for Climate Protection and the BC Energy Step Code. So as a registered charity, our charitable mandate, is to help communities in Canada with energy sustainability and climate action. And we are a membership-based organization. And so we have members across BC, including, well, the town of Summerland, and lots of members across the north and all over BC. Anyway, in terms of our organization, what we do is we support communities through, all kinds of different ways through climate action. So through planning, for example, so we do a lot of community energy emissions plans. We do a lot of work on coaching as well. So we run something called the BC Municipal Climate Leadership Council. And we also run staff networks as well on climate action, and such as, for example, on the BC Energy Step Code. And we also do things on the infrastructure side of things. So a lot of things, for example, with electric vehicles. And we also support communities with implementing the BC Energy Step Code. So basically anything to do with communities and energy sustainability and climate action, that's what we do. And thank you so much for sorting out the gremlins over there. It's terrific. Yeah, because wonderful, thank you. And it's actually better for me to ad-lib because then you know that I know my material and I'm not just reading from the slides. So I'm just going to skip through all this stuff because we kind of covered it. Oh yeah, we do transportation, buildings and waste, of course, because there's the source of emissions that you can see the members. I forgot about Peachland, I'm afraid, in terms of some of our Okanagan members. We have Vernon and Lumbee as well. And anyway, so quickly I'll talk a little bit about the Partners for Climate Protection, or PCP for short. And so we're the regional climate advisors for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities for this program. And we're one of 6 regional partners. Essentially, just like to encourage the town of Oliver to consider joining if that could be of interest to the town. So it's a network of over 350 Canadian municipalities, and it's about making a commitment to reduce greenhouse gases and act on climate change. It is a partnership between the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and another organization called ICLEI. It is a completely free program, so free to join, and there's free support. There's community, basically you progress through a series of milestones. The town of Oliver already has, a community energy emissions inventory. You already have a greenhouse gas emission reduction target as well in your official community plan. And you already have actually a climate action plan as well. That was done by, I think, the Shelter group, which later became part of Stantec. So I'm not sure which name is actually on the plan, if it's Shelter or Stantec, but one of those names will be on the plan. It was done in conjunction with the Regional District of Okanagan-Similkameen a number of years back. Anyway, but just to say, you can move through a number of the milestones already. And so I just wanted to kind of highlight that opportunity, if that could be of interest to the town. Now, I'd just like to talk a little bit about this thing called the BC Energy Step Code. And so just kind of some preamble before I get into it. Just want to make clear that there are a lot of rebates available from Fortis BC for new homes. And so these rebates, Fortis just increased the rebates, I think last week or the week before last. And so they're for homes, whether they're built using, for the town, whether they're built using Fortis natural gas or Fortis electricity, or any combination, of course, because, you know, the energy source is from Fortis. So I'm not going to, this is a horribly complicated slide, and I'm not going to go into details on this, but just want to make clear that there's a number of different pathways for builders. If you look at the values under option A, depending on the various steps, and I'll get into what those steps mean in a few slides, but there's really quite a lot of money available for builders that's on the table at the moment if builders wish to build to beyond the minimum energy requirements of the current BC Building Code. If they want to build to that now, there's quite a lot of money available for builders. But there's other options as well. So as you can see under option B, then, you know, a builder can, you know, just put in various types of equipment and get, again, you know, some fairly generous incentives as well. So fairly generous rebates. And then also want to make clear that there is this new thing as well, which just came out again about a week or 2 weeks ago, called the Fortis Design Offer. And so it's for, you know, folks who are building new buildings, and whether it's to step 3, 4, or 5, they can get money for design. And it's up to $7,000 if it's just a detached home or a unique unit in a multifamily complex, and it's up to $50,000 for multifamily projects. And so, again, quite generous. You know, we're really quite lucky. It's so, you know, this money, Fortis is required to, you know, create this, to put incentives on the table because of the BC Utilities Commission, and then required by the province to then make those incentives more generous as well. So that's why this money is on the table. And usually, you know, we see like, you know, a lifespan for these types of programs. You can't expect this money to be on the table forever, you know, as I'm sure you will have seen for other things in the past. But anyway, I haven't really gone into what is the BC Energy Step Code. I've just told you that there's help out there. And so what is the BC Energy Step Code? So I'll start with a little bit of the history. So there was something called actually it was through the previous BC government. There was the BC Building Act and also the last BC Climate Plan. And basically the Building Act required consistency, competency, and innovation. Well, that was kind of the three things it was aiming for. It ended the ability for local governments to set local building requirements and local building bylaws, which was at the time kind of revolutionary. And then the Climate Leadership Plan established a target that all new construction was going to be net zero ready by 2032. And the Clean BC Plan, which, so there's, as you can see, 2 climate plans that happened since the BC Building Act. The Clean BC Plan then had a pathway to achieve these legislated midterm targets. But basically, what happened, you know, with this BC Building Act is that a number of communities said, well, how are we going to meet these greenhouse gas emission reduction targets? You know, the province has put us in a tricky place. You've made us have greenhouse gas targets in our official community plans and regional growth strategies, and you've taken away our ability to have these, to make requirements around buildings in our local building bylaws. So how are we going to affect new construction? So anyway, a large number of stakeholders got together in terms of figuring out this problem. So as you can see, there was industry involved, including the Canadian Home Builders Association and the Urban Development Institute, governments, of course, so lots of local governments and other levels of government. It was chaired by the province of BC and BC Hydro, this particular Energy Step Code Council. And anyway, and academia were also involved. And so over a course of a couple of years, they came up with this BC Energy Step Code, and they basically figured things have to be performance-based. We don't want to just have prescriptive requirements, because that takes away the ability for people to kind of, to find innovative ways to do things, to find smarter ways to, you know, improve energy efficiency. It's all around performance. So they just narrowed it down to like a couple of metrics, and it basically comes down to energy modeling and air tightness testing. And there's, you know, 5 steps for Part 9 homes, so for Part 9 buildings, in other words, single-family homes or townhomes. And step 1 is So basically building to what the current BC Building Code is, but using these new tools that a lot of builders are currently unfamiliar with, energy modeling and air tightness testing. Then we have step 2, which is about 10% better than code. Step 3, which is about 20% better than code. Step 4, which is about 40% better than code. And step 5, which is roughly 50, even up to 80% better than code. And so that's where we're going to be in 2032. I'll actually jump to the next slide. So this shows the pathway. So 2032, we're going to be hitting step 5. And the pathway to that is, well, 2022 is probably December 2022, I've been told. We'll be hitting step 3, and then 2027 we'll be hitting step 4, and then, 2032, as I said. So that's a sort of graduated path forward that we're going to be seeing across the province. And for Part 3 buildings, it's step 2, step 3, step 4. And so local governments can sign up to, and it's absolutely at their discretion, can sign up to these steps in advance. And they can sign up to them in advance of the BC Building Code moving along. And they can choose to do that, or they can choose not to. And it's entirely their call. And they can choose to do it in all kinds of different ways. So some communities have chosen to say, we're going to have a very strict step, for example, in this one part of the community. Some communities said, we're just going to have some incentives. You know, a couple of incentives a year even. I think that's Invermere's approach. A couple of incentives a year, you know, just if you're going to build to a more energy efficient standard. Some communities have said we're going to incent, more homes than just a couple. And so, you know, all kinds of communities have taken different approaches, but some have just said, we're just going to have this mandate across our community that it's going to be this way. And it's really up to communities' discretion if and how they want to implement this. That's why it's referred to as a voluntary code. And by the way, it is written into the BC Building Code as well. And as I've said, so it is entirely performance-based. So it's energy modeling and air tightness testing, both of which are generally done by an energy advisor, and there's no prescriptive energy requirements. So it's really around performance. And I mentioned a couple of metrics that it looks for. It basically is looking at the envelope. So the building envelope, the time to build a good envelope is when a building is being built, because it's a lot cheaper to build, put in that extra little bit of insulation when it's being built than to put it in afterwards. If you've ever received a quote to say, get your siding off and put a bit of extra insulation in the walls and then put the siding back on or something like that. And then equipment efficiency as well. It's also, so those are the two metrics which are looked at. Now this slide, I have to apologize a little bit, it's kind of out of date, but it still gets the point across. So as of, so you can see across the bottom there, you can see the different years. So December 2017 to March 2018, then April to October, and then November to March. You can see how many communities have started to reference the BC Energy Step Code in their bylaws. And you can see it started off small, and by March 2019, it got up to 15%. But a lot of the big guys were involved. So, and that's why, 15% of communities can be 70% of all new building permits issued in BC are then governed by the BC Energy Step Code. So a lot of communities in the Lower Mainland, also the Capital Regional District area, and within the Okanagan, this is what's happening. So Penticton was the first community out of the gate, and so if a builder right now is building in Penticton, as you can see from the dates there, they need to build to step 3. Anywhere in the community, you need to build to step 3. So that's 20% better than if you're building elsewhere in the regional district of the Okanagan Similkameen. Lake Country, so step 1 was initiated, you can see, April the 1st, 2019. Step 3 will be on October the 1st of this year. So that's when it will be 20% better than code. And Kelowna was a little bit further behind. So step 1 in December the 1st, 2019, but step 3, June the 1st of next year, 2021. So a number of communities consulting, so these are communities that have officially sent their initial notification of consultation to the province of BC. That's Summerland, Vernon, Peachland, West Kelowna. I know for a fact that West Kelowna, they're not going to move ahead before the BC Building Code. They submitted that initial notice of consultation. So you can submit your initial notice of consultation. It doesn't bind you to anything. You can submit, consult, see what people say, and then make your decision. But if you're going to start consulting, you need to submit that. And if you're going to implement, then you need to have submitted that piece of paper at least 6 months in advance. And then, so this is all about working with an energy advisor. I just want to check to see what energy advisors we have in the room. I know we have Jerry Sorkins and, okay, so we have Jerry Sorkins, local energy advisor. There's a number of different energy advisors that people can tap into. Jerry is based in Penticton, but there's other energy advisors who are based, around the Okanagan. And they're certified through Natural Resources Canada. They deliver this EnerGuide rating system. They use EnerCan software, the HOT 2000 software. And you're probably familiar with energy advisors. They've been, delivering these kinds of energy programs for homes for 30 years. And, for example, if you got a rebate to, upgrade your furnace a number of years ago, it probably, you worked with an energy advisor. And you probably saw this, this blower door being attached to your front door and all of that. So it's basically that, all that same kind of stuff, but with new homes happening. Finally happening. So anyway, a few suggestions here. So you could join the FCM ICLEI Partners for Climate Protection if you want to make that kind of public declaration around climate action. You could request, one of our jobs is to get the word out about that Fortis BC New Home Program. So we can get you leaflets or electronic copies of that information about the New Home Program to let builders know that there's this money available. So if you want to train yourself in how to build to these standards, which are coming anyway, no matter what, no matter where you build, it's coming. At least, you can get paid to learn how to train now. The town could participate in the Step Code Peer Network, and we have some resources available. And again, that is free to join. And you could also submit your initial notification form on Step Code consultation if you wish as well, and submit that to the province. And that's everything I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Any questions from the presentation, Council? Councillor Mattis?
Thank you, Your Worship. The one question would be between the building code and an increase of the step one,
Yeah.
2 or 3 to go with the 20%, let's say. What is the average cost to the home?
About 2% increase.
2%?
Yeah, it's about a 2% increase. But there are savings that are made through reductions in energy costs. So
Does that 2% include those savings, or is that?
no, that's purely a capital increase.
Okay.
Yeah, so obviously it depends on things like mortgage rates and things like that. Obviously mortgage rates are very low right now, and so you're kind of incented to kind of, if mortgage rates were higher, it would be harder to justify an increase in capital cost. But because they're lower, it's easier to justify. But we're just having a conversation with Jerry earlier. We figured it was, about a 7-year payback?
It's a 7-year payback for getting a house from step 1 to step 3. And that's assuming a 20% energy reduction that you'll see.
Do we need to get Jerry to speak through the
Yes,
microphone
it'd
for
be
the
good,
for
or
the
you
people
speak for
online?
him, yeah.
Well, I don't know if you want to.
I'll share.
Yeah. Otherwise, they can't hear you online.
Okay, I've been doing this for about 10 years, and I've done some financial studies for step code, and it basically is about a 7-year payback in taking a house from step 1 to step 3. So a step 1 house today is your existing building code as it exists, with just the requirement for an energy advisor to become involved and do his work. So there's no extra cost to the builder other than the energy advisor and his involvement. To get to step 3 is about a $7,000 investment. You can amortize that as a personal loan or as a mortgage piece, and that will pay back between 7 to 7.5 years. And what that accrues to the individual is a 20% reduction in energy to the house for the utility costs. So everybody knows what their utility bills are for energy today, especially in the winter. It's a 20% reduction across the board for that household. So that can translate for affordable housing projects, since that is not the tenant who is paying for the cost of the mortgage, but he's renting his property. He assumes, or he gets the benefit of a 20% utility reduction to him or her for his use of the facility. And for private homeowners, the same thing translates through to them as, again, a reduction over 7 years.
Any other questions, Council? The dates that you have, Peter, in here, it shows 2022. Is that that's a target date, or is there a hard date on that for step 3 in Part 9 buildings?
Yeah, I understand it's a hard date. So we only have between now and 2032, we have, like 2022 and 2027. Those are when the codes are going to be coming out. But I understand it's going to be December of 2022, is what I've been told.
Okay, about 2 years. Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions, comments. Awesome presentation. Thank you for the information.
Thank you.
Councillor Ventimiglia has a comment.
Councillor Ventimiglia?
We can't hear you, Councillor Ventimiglia, just a moment. Is it something on the...
While we're waiting on that, are we at step 1 now, or
Essentially, we're kind of before step 1.
just before?
So
when's-
step 1 is meant to be meeting the current BC building code, but using these tools. So a number of communities have, just signed on to step 1 first. Well, you saw, for example, and I'll just zoom back if I can. Maybe I switched it off. And a number of communities, so for example, you might have seen that with Penticton and Lake Country and Kelowna, they've chosen to move to step 1 first. So it's basically meeting the current BC building code, but using these tools of energy modeling and air tightness testing. So, but meeting the same kind of performance requirements, but allows them then more flexibility in terms of meeting the BC building code than the prescriptive requirements in the code. So the BC building code has had energy requirements in it, for some time now. Yeah, what they call Section 936. Yeah.
Councillor Ventimiglia should be able to speak. Oh, we could test that.
Sure.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes, we can.
All right, I'm like the faraway voice. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? So I just wondered when listening to the presentation, would we be able to use these steps then sort of in advance of when they're going to be required as incentives for building to a more energy efficient model, as was mentioned is happening in other communities? So encourage people to use them ahead of the deadlines. And we went over our strategic plan earlier in the day. And, on there we have investigating and developing incentives for developers to go green. Would this fit into that?
Available, yeah. Through your worship to council, there's a number of different suggestions. So the province of BC has created a guide called the Best Practices Guide for Local Governments. It's available through the BC Energy Step Code website. And there's a number of different suggestions on ways forward that this could be done. So, there are examples of communities that have done this, for example, like reduction to building permits for homes that are building above certain code levels. The City of Kelowna actually does this for certain steps, for quite high steps. But there's other options as well, some that can have essentially no budget implication as well. Obviously, budgets are always of concern to councils, and rightfully so. But things like, rezoning policy, for example. So, you could build, you can say, well, you can build to, so for example, like this type of building or this type of height, but, we're going to give you more flexibility if, you're going to do something for us, and there's, all different kinds of things that councils can ask for, but an improved energy performance is one of them now. So that is something, for example, that could be a possibility. But there's a whole list of different things in this best practices guide. There's about 10 different options. If that helps.
Director?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that.
Okay. Do you want me to sterilize? No, it's okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did want to add too that it's staff's intention to to reach out to the building community throughout this fall, so October, November, and we were planning on hosting like a builder's breakfast and have them in and share sort of a similar presentation and get their thoughts and feedback on moving towards possibly implementing step 1 ahead of time, since it's going to be, since step 3 will be mandatory in 2022. But the idea is we'll gather all the information from them and see how it went, and then we'll provide the feedback to council, and then we can make a decision on where we want to go moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Director. As far as that best practices guide, can we have access to that as well? It'd be an interesting read.
Yep, definitely.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, Council? Thank you, Peter. Thanks for taking the time. Come and get us up to speed on the step code.
Thank you very much.
It's coming quickly. Actually, I did have one more question. Have some of the other communities, I think I'm aware of some of them that are actually helping the developers get up to speed as the step code is coming. It can be pretty hard to suddenly just all of a sudden, okay, it's now step code 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we may not have done anything getting prepared for that other than following the building code.
Right.
Getting contractors and developers up to speed on what's required, what's available for those companies to do.
Yeah. A fantastic question.
Yeah.
So actually, we're doing something right now, and I should have made that clearer. And Randy briefly spoke to it, but that we're going to be doing a builder's breakfast here with the town of Oliver, thanks to some funding from Fortis BC. And so, we'll have, we still need to, I think, flesh out the agenda a little bit. But, we're going to kind of introduce the step code and talk about it. And builders that show up will get a free breakfast. Of course, we'll have to be careful with COVID arrangements and all of that. With the City of Penticton, we were able to put on a builders workshop as well with BCIT. So we got builders, licensed residential builders these days. They need, these CPD points, these professional development points. And so so they could show up to that and then get their CPD points, their whole year's allocation in just one day. And so we put that on in the resort by the lake there in Penticton. We've done things like that as well with Kelowna and Lake Country and Vernon as well. Yeah, so, and there's, that sort of training available. BCIT obviously have shifted their courses to be online as well. There might be opportunities, so I know I'm giving a slightly long answer to a short question, but I know the Okanagan College, they have their Sustainable Construction Management Technology course as well. They've been looking at getting into this. They've just been very busy, but they've been looking at trying to sort of getting more involved in providing this kind of training as well locally.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. With no other questions, we'll move on to business. Telecommunications Tower, 6450 Spartan Street. Corporate Officer, your report.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report before Council this evening is to provide Council with some photo simulations that are attached to your report for the proposed placement of the telecommunication tower at 6450 Spartan Street. Back in August of 2019, Council endorsed a resolution to proceed with the siting of the telecommunications tower at 6450 Spartan Street. At that time, you requested to see some photo simulations to be able to provide input on the type of tower. There's a monopole or a tripole, and potentially some color options that would blend the tower into the hillside as much as possible. Rogers Communication has provided the photo simulation of the monopole and the tripole in both gray and tan colors. In the attached PowerPoint from Rogers, it shows the location. Photo 1 is before, that is without the tower. Photo 1 again shows the tripole in the location behind the home. And then again with the monopole all in the gray color. And then in the tan color. So it's showing you the monopole, the tripole in gray and in tan. as well as looking up the street to the location with no tower. And then with the tri-pole simulation in the gray color, and the monopole in the gray color. Photo 2, the after monopole painted tan, is the last image. So these images provide council with a little bit of idea of what the proposed telecommunications tower could look like at that property. Rogers would be happy to hear if you have an idea on either one of those, or if you wanted to see some additional simulations. And the options before council is that you may choose to select the type and color of the telecommunications tower, or you may refer back to staff for additional information. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. I myself would like to see more options available to us. I believe, or I've been led to believe, that these telecommunications companies are quite flexible in terms of what they can build and how they can make it look, to the point of disguising them as trees, this sorts of thing. And I'm just wondering if we communicate with Rogers to see if there are options. I mean, they've given us option A and option B. I'd like to see if there's another 23 different options as to what it could look like in terms of on the hillside above town.
Mm-hmm.
If we can make it look like a tree, let's make it look like a tree.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Grace.
I don't think so.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I mean, I would support what Councillor Mattis says. Of the three options we were given, I was kind of surprised, actually, because it seemed to me that the tripole was the least visible. I would have assumed it would have been the, the tan-colored monopole, but the monopoles I thought looked really just awful. So, and the tripole you can kind of see right through, so it seemed to have the least visibility. But yeah, if there's other options, if we could make it look like a tree and not have to look at it, I think that's great.
Councillor Schwarzenberger.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree with my fellow councillors. I think we should see what other options are available. And hopefully the people who live on Spartan Street know that there will be public consultation through the RDOS, I believe.
It's actually through the applicant. They do the public notification, signage, and distribution, and they hold the public hearing.
Oh, great. Well,
But they have had some trouble because the RDOS had their ransomware attack and accessing information, so there's a little bit of a delay in that aspect.
yeah, but at least going forward, there will be a chance for those people on Spartan to get some more information and have their opinions heard. But again, I do agree that if we could see some more options and make it look like a tree, or if it's even the tripole, if it seems to be that if you can make it look almost invisible, then that's good too.
Thank you. Councillor Ventimiglia, any comments?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Can you hear me?
Yep. Yes.
All right, perfect. So along with my fellow councillors, I thought of the options presented, the tripole seems to be the least obtrusive, and I think it's because, as described, you can kind of see through it to a certain extent. But as was expressed by a few, I think we were led to believe that there's a lot more that can be done, and they can be a lot more creative. And so I do look forward to seeing other options. And I was going to ask about the public consultation as well, because I hadn't heard anything. I was wondering if they were perhaps waiting on a design before going towards going to public consultation, but the description provided by the corporate officer for the delays makes sense. But I think it is important that people know that there will be public consultation, that this doesn't mean much aside from, having a design to present. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll quickly just agree with all council that it would be nice to see if there's any more options available.
On that basis, Your Worship, I would make the motion that council direct staff to request Rogers Communications to provide additional options for a telecommunications tower to better blend into the hillside above Oliver.
I'll second.
Moved in
I'll
second.
second.
Any further comments, questions, Council? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to bylaws, Animal Control Bylaw 1224.05 for first, second, and third reading. I will call the Director of Development Services, whose report is attached.
Thank you, Worship. The purpose of this report is to introduce Animal Control Bylaw 1224.05, which has provisions for permitting domestic ducks within the municipality, while also adding more provisions for the keeping of chickens. The proposed Animal Control Bylaw establishes provisions for the keeping of ducks within the municipality that match the existing provisions for chickens. So no chickens or ducks are permitted on properties under 500 square meters. 3 hens or ducks plus 1 additional hen or duck for each full 100 meters squared of lot area greater than 500 square meters to a maximum of 10 hens or ducks combined. Staff consider that the existing guidelines for the number of chickens have proved to be successful and recommend that the same be applied for ducks in an either-or situation to a maximum of 10 total. Additionally, more detailed provisions are being added for the keeping of ducks and chickens within the municipality. No roosters, cocks, cockerels, peacocks, and the like are to be kept on the property. A minimum enclosure of 4 square feet must be provided per chicken or duck. Any structure containing chickens or ducks, whether portable or stationary, is to be located behind the front face of the principal dwelling and a minimum of 10 feet from any property line or the minimum setback in the zone, whichever is greater. Structures housing chickens or ducks must be kept clean, dry, and free of odors. Chicken and duck manure and waste products are composted or disposed of to prevent odors. Any diseased chicken or duck is killed and the carcass destroyed. No slaughtering of chickens or ducks occur on the property, and chickens or ducks are not permitted within a dwelling unit. These guidelines are derived from the City of Nanaimo, which has been successful in implementing provisions for ducks with little to no complaints. It's important to note that the existing legally conforming chicken coops will not be required to adhere to the 10-foot minimum setback from property lines due to non-conforming rights. The property owner that is subject to bylaw enforcement that we've been speaking about the past few months will be required to relocate their duck coop a minimum of 10 feet from the neighboring property line, given that it was a non-permitted use prior to the proposed amendment bylaw. As part of this amendment, staff are also recommending removing Schedule A, which is the fees and disbursement. This is a housekeeping matter, and these charges are already included in the fees and charges bylaw, which prevails over all other bylaws. Other proposed bylaw amendments include incorrect references to schedules. So with that, the staff recommendation is that Council give first, second, and third reading to Animal Control Bylaw 1224.05, and that adoption of the bylaw be scheduled for the October 13th, 2020 meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Council, any questions, comments? Councillor Grace?
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I think staff did a really good job drafting this bylaw. I'm really happy with how it's written, and I certainly would support it as written. And
Go ahead.
well, I was going to move it unless there's comment. Okay. Then I will move that Council give first, second, and third reading to the Animal Control Bylaw 1224.05, and that adoption of the bylaw be scheduled for October 13th, 2020 meeting.
I'll second.
Seconded. Councillor Mattis, you had a comment?
Thank you, Your Worship. I also think that staff did a great job on this. They covered all the bases. It's the only thing I see that's unfortunate is it can't be retroactive.
Councillor Ventimiglia, any comments? No. Okay.
Yes, Your Worship. Sorry. Thank you for asking. It takes me a minute to flip between the agenda screen and the Zoom screen. So no comments. I support the bylaw as well. I think it was really well written, and I think it hit on kind of all of the concerns raised throughout the process. I support it. Thank you.
Thank you. I also support it. I think there's enough rigor in the bylaw that bylaw services will be able to manage any issues that come up. If there's no further comments or questions, I will call a question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Number 2, the Heritage Procedure Bylaw 1395 for first, second, and third reading. Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Worship. The purpose of this report is to introduce Heritage Procedure Bylaw 1395. Some of the main amendments as part of this bylaw, or the main provisions rather, it creates provisions for adding or removing a property from the Community Heritage Register. It also has provisions for an application for a heritage designation bylaw and what's required with that. Adds provisions for an application for a heritage alteration permit as well. The proposed bylaw has been thoroughly discussed with the Oliver and District Heritage Society, and Sue from the Heritage Society was here a few weeks ago giving her thoughts on the bylaw and a background on heritage protection and her experiences. The main comment from the Society was to ensure that the application fees are kept as low as possible. Once the procedure bylaw is adopted, an application could be brought forward to protect the Town Hall building under Heritage Protection Bylaw. Staff note that there are other options for long-term protection of heritage structures and properties, such as heritage revitalization agreements and heritage conservation areas. These options have not been utilized by the town in the past, and staff feel it would further complicate the procedure bylaw at this time. The purpose of this bylaw is to set procedures for protecting the Town Hall building by a heritage designation bylaw, which is what has been done in the past in Oliver through the Visitor Center and Museum building. Also, the purpose of this amendment bylaw report is to remove the South Okanagan Secondary School from the Community Heritage Register due to the fire it sustained in 2011. So with that, the recommendation is that Council give first, second, and third reading to Heritage Procedure Bylaw 1395, and that adoption of the bylaw be scheduled for the October 13th, 2020 meeting, and that South Okanagan Secondary School be removed from the Community Heritage Register, and that Council direct staff to send a letter to the Heritage Minister notifying of this removal. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Questions, comments, Council? Can I get a mover of the motion? Councillor Schwarzenberger?
I'll move the recommendation.
Moved.
I'll second.
Second. Councillor Bentamila, I can't see your hand, just in case. I'll ask.
All good. Thank you.
Thank you. Hearing no comments, questions, I will call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. And item 3, Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw 1383-01, Corporate Officer. This is for first, second, and third reading.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this report this evening is to amend the Fees and Charges Bylaw 1383 to accommodate changes in the fees and introduction of new fees. In November of 2019, Council adopted the new Fees and Charges Bylaw 1383. This bylaw consolidated charges excluding water and sewer into one bylaw for convenience. At the time of adoption, Council was informed that fees and charges would be reviewed on an annual basis in conjunction of the budget process. Each department has reviewed their applicable schedules and recommended some changes for Council's consideration, which are highlighted in yellow in the attached amendment bylaw. But to summarize the amendments, I can go through them with you. In the table of contents under building permit section 1.0, it's simply to remove the wording "and moving," and the reasoning is just a description change. Similarly, under general fees, schedule 1, under public works fees, The Director of Operations is recommending the remove of the IE grader and change it to add and labor, and to make it actual costs. They feel that that would reflect a better reflection of the costs that are for that equipment, and we don't have a grader anymore, so it's best to remove that wording. Building permit fees, Schedule 2, 1.0 again is to remove the words "and moving." 1.1, the application fee, that is to increase the fee from $50 to $100, and that accurately reflects staff time cost for the processing of that building permit application fee. At any time you want to stop and question any of the fees, just speak up and then I'll stop. 1.2, application fee for signage. Add application fee for signage non-refundable, and to set the fee at $50. This separates the sign permit fee from the building permit fee. Currently, it's a part of it, and a $50 fee would reflect the cost for staff to process a signage application. Under demolition permits, 2.1, the application fee, that's an increase of $50 to $100. Again, that provides consistency in the building permit fee and the demolition permit fees, so they're both the same. And again, that would reflect staff time cost. Plumbing permits, 4.2, sprinkler head, to add the sprinkler head and set the fee at $2. This is a new fee, and this matches the practice in other municipalities. That's a fee that we currently don't charge for. 4.3, standpipe fire department hydrant. That's to add the standpipe fire department connection and a private hydrant, and set the fee at $10 each. That's a new fee, and again, it matches the practice in other municipalities. 4.4, that's just a renumbering. 6.2, miscellaneous fee. That's to add a plan check fee, and the fee is at $100. The new building official has noted that this would be for review of revised drawings where more than 2 plan checks have been submitted, or substantial changes to an approved design that has been completed during construction that requires additional building code or zoning review. Under development services, Schedule 4, subdivisions, 9.2 agreements, removing the word early registration and changing to service agreement. This reflects the current town practices again, and a servicing agreement, correct me if I'm wrong, Director of Development Services, is to enable an early registration of a subdivision application. 13.1, signage. That is just to increase the fee from $100 to $105. That's just to reflect our tax cost. Under this item, there's no administrative fee applied to that item, so it's just recovering our tax cost. Good neighbor bylaw, Schedule 6, vacant building and registration permit. 1.5, registration permit of a single family and a 2-family dwelling. It's increased the fee from $300 to $1,000. And 1.6, registration permit in all zones, increased the fee from $400 to $2,000. And in both cases, this is to encourage increased accountability to owners of vacant buildings. Excessive nuisance abatement fees, 3.1, RCMP nuisance service call. It was at a rate, I don't recall it off the top of my head, and we've changed it from actual cost to $200. The RCMP have not been able to provide us with a salary cost. It's just something that they cannot do. So to be able to recoup some of those costs and put pressure on a nuisance property, we would like to apply a $200 fee each time the RCMP attend. And likewise with town, with our nuisance calls, sometimes we want to add the words or $100, whichever is greater. It is at actual cost, but sometimes a staff member will attend. It's their basic salary, let's say $30. So we're not really putting the pressure on a nuisance property if we're charging them $30. Under legal documents, comfort letters, this is undertaken by the Director of Development Services again, increased the fee from 100 to 150. This reflects staff time and matches costs by neighboring municipalities. And I've attached the amended bylaw for your review. That's got the highlights through there. Like I said, the fees and charges bylaw, now we have our new consolidated one, is reviewed on an annual basis, and it will help staff in and council in the preparation for the 2021 budgeting process. So the recommendation before council is to support the recommendation, or you may choose to refer it back to staff for additional information, or you may choose not to support the recommendation. And the recommendation before council is to give first, second, and third reading of the fees and charges amendment bylaw, and to bring it back to the October 13th meeting for adoption. Thank you.
Thank you, Corporate Officer. Councillor Schwarzenberger.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just could I get some more information on the big jump on the vacant building registration? Seems like a whopping change. So can I get a little more information on why that needs to go up that high, and just what types? I mean, I understand a vacant building, it has to be boarded up and everything. Obviously, there's some cost to the owner to do that and to maintain that, but yeah, could you just explain why the fees are so high in those two cases, please?
Director.
Thank you, Worship. Couple points. We noticed researching other municipalities that they are substantially higher than what we had before. So these changes are sort of to match some of the neighboring municipalities. And secondly, we have noticed sort of there's a handful of vacant buildings in this town that we've had difficulties dealing with, trying to get them demolished in the past. And thirdly, bylaw enforcement is now going to be more proactive in seeking out vacant buildings that aren't following the guidelines in the Good Neighbor bylaw. So just, I could add a little bit more on that, because I know at the previous meeting I wasn't able to touch on that. But in our Good Neighbor bylaw, a vacant building, it basically states no person shall allow a building or structure for human, industrial, or commercial use or occupancy to stand vacant for more than 60 days unless the following applies. The building is the subject of an active building permit. The building meets all applicable codes, does not contribute to blight, is ready for occupancy, and is actively being offered for sale, lease, or rent. So if a tenant left, as long as they were actively looking for a tenant, then they wouldn't need a vacant building registration permit. Or the building official determines that the building does not contribute a nuisance or hazardous condition requiring building permits for remedial work or demolition. So to answer your question, yeah, I mean, it is a big jump for sure, but it was sort of to match what I noticed in some of the other municipalities.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just as a follow-up to that, I also think it's an excessive amount, and just because the other guys are doing it doesn't mean we should be. My question was more around these sprinklers. I'm assuming that this is for sprinklered buildings such as this one, and while you were reading your report, I'm looking up at the ceiling, and in a building like this, that could add thousands and thousands of dollars to the cost. And I have to ask myself the question, why? Why are we charging $2 per sprinkler head? Maybe you can answer that. And again, just because the other guys do is not a good answer.
Do you want to hear my answer then? Yeah, I mean, ultimately, a plumbing fixture. I mean, so why you charge it based on number of sinks. So you charge. I know sprinklers are more of an emergency situation, but essentially it's just charged by the number of fixtures.
So
Yeah.
we charge by the tap?
Number of fixtures, yes.
So every tap on a house, we charge extra for that?
In the plumbing permit.
$8 each.
Okay.
So when we were reviewing the BC Housing building, they had asked if we charged for sprinkler heads, and then we felt that the sprinkler didn't necessarily fit into a category of a fixture. So we researched other municipalities, and Osea's had a separate fee for sprinklers. So that's why we recommend adding it. So for future apartment buildings, we could add $2 for each sprinkler head.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I support that. I would certainly, I just have an issue with if we're charging to review plans, then that should just be part of the plan review. It's like, you know, are we going to start counting how many square feet of concrete you have and, you know, there's a fee per square foot? I don't know. It just seems strange to me to be charging in that fashion when we're supposed to be basically recouping costs plus fees type of a thing. And do we charge, do you know if would they charge by the plug-in on electrical permits?
I don't know the answer to that. The electrical permits don't go through the town.
I understand
Yeah.
that. It just seems like a strange way to run a permit system to me.
Councillor Grace?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I hadn't flagged the sprinkler fee, but it does seem a little superfluous to me as well. I did want to go back to the vacant building fees, and sorry to sort of beat this one to death, but so I guess the purpose of this registration, it's to deter having a vacant building, or is it to encourage them to demolish it rather than paying this fee, or either or, I guess?
Either or, yeah.
So is there once you've paid this fee, is there a maximum amount of time then that building can remain vacant?
I believe the permit's for 2 years, but I'd have to look into that.
Okay.
No, I believe it says it right in the bylaw.
Thank you. Okay, that answers that question for me then. Thank you.
There's a provision in there, sorry to add, but that you would get refunded up to 75% of that fee if you demolish within the first 6 months. So just to point that out.
Councillor Ventimiglia?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a couple of questions or points to make. So one of them, and I guess we continue to beat the same drum, but one of them was regarding those permits that we've been talking about, so the vacant building and registration permit. And so I've heard the conversation going around, and the question that I had at the beginning before we started this, I still don't think I've heard answered. So when we see the increase from $400 to $2,000, the description is to encourage increased accountability to owners of vacant buildings. And from everything I've heard, I fail to understand how charging somebody $2,000 instead of $400 is going to increase their accountability to their vacant building. So if we could chat about that, that would be great. I'll just throw them all out there. And then maybe the director can respond. The next one was in regards to sprinklers. As my fellow councillor mentioned, I as well think charging per fixture is kind of a little bit a bit of a strange way to do it, and I know that we do it in other departments as well, and I guess I've always thought it was a bit of a strange way to do it. So adding something, as mentioned, in a building such as the rest of council is sitting in right now, adding thousands of dollars to the cost just based on sprinklers, all we're going to be doing by throwing that on there is adding to the cost to build, which makes it less affordable to build in our community. So that's something to consider, and I think is being considered. And then my last question, question, is a smaller dollar amount, but still something that I was wondering about. The 1.1 and 2.1, the increase in fees from $50 to $100 to more accurately reflect staff time and cost. I was just wondering, when is the last time that we looked at those fees, and when is the last time that they were increased to see such a big jump from one year to the next? And those are my questions. Thank you.
To answer the last question, the current building bylaw was adopted in 2004 or 2006, and it was $50 then. So it hasn't been increased in approximately 15 years. I'm not sure if the previous building bylaw before that also was $50. The main reason for that jump is if someone came in with a permit for like $1,000 deck or something, then they pay the $50, title search $62. Well, so $62, and that covers the clerk entering it, that it covers the planner reviewing it for the zoning, that then covers the building inspector reviewing the plans, marking up the drawings, and going out and inspecting it as well. So that's a $62 permit. So does that cover at least 3 to 4 hours of staff, 3 hours of staff time at least for a simple project? That's sort of why I'm recommending the jump at least up to $100 at this time, more for the lower value permits. Thanks. And honestly, Councillor Ventimiglia, I don't remember the first question.
Okay, so thank you for that last description. That was perfect. My other questions, or I guess comments, were following up on some things mentioned by my fellow councillors. So sprinklers, being that it's a new fee that we haven't had before, and it's been added because neighboring communities have something similar. I think that the point's been made, but I just wanted to restate it, that adds to the cost of building in our community, which makes building in our community less affordable, something that we are not striving for. And then my last, or the first point I made, I guess, or question that I had was regarding the one we've been talking about. So the vacant building and registration permit. The description there and the increase from $300 to $1,000 is to encourage increased accountability to owners of vacant buildings. And I was just saying how I have listened to the question and answers so far, but I still don't understand how an increase in fee encourages increased accountability to owners of vacant buildings.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, ultimately it would maybe encourage them, if they have to pay $2,000 to register their building, they may just decide to demolish it from the start. If it's an older vacant building, if it's a building that's is still in good shape, but it's not a nuisance necessarily, well then maybe they wouldn't need the vacant building registration permit. So ultimately these vacant building registration permits are going to be for dilapidated buildings that, such as the 555 Earls and other buildings that the town has struggled to deal with. We're now going to be actively pursuing these individuals to get the permits. And if they have to pay a large fee at the start, then maybe that will deter them from registering it. And yeah, that was the thinking behind that. And they may just decide to demo it from the start, I guess I should say.
Okay, thank you for that description.
Councillor Schwarzenberger.
Thank you. Yes, regarding that, I hadn't noticed this refund if remediated or demolished within the first 6 months of registration of 75%. So that if they did demolish within the first 6 months, that would drop their permit down to $250 and $500, which seems fine to me. And obviously it's an incentive for them to do something with that property to make it so that it's not considered a vacant nuisance. So I'm fine with that now. Thank you.
Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to follow up on Councillor Schwarzenberger there, that all works, but if it takes longer than 6 months to renovate or remediate the building, then they wouldn't qualify. So I get it on the demolition side. I'm not so certain on the repair side whether that's sufficient time. My question was, over and above that, my question was through to the corporate officer. I would believe that we would like to move ahead to give first, second, third reading to this, but I wanted to know the process for amendments. Like for myself, I would like to drop the sprinkler head fee from the bylaw. Is that something that I have to put forward as a separate motion now? To amend it now before adoption?
Yes, that would be the process to, we could give first, second, third as amended.
Okay.
And you could add in the statement to remove the plumbing permit 4.2 sprinkler
And
head.
on that basis, I would make the motion that the bylaw be amended to remove the plumbing permit 4.2 sprinkler head from the bylaw. And other councillors may have amendments that they want to make as well, I'm not sure. But we'll start with that one.
4.2.
Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Your Worship. So sorry to clarify, is the amendment a separate motion or is it just an addition?
It's a
Or
separate,
just-
it's a separate motion, and then the adoption would be as amended.
Okay, thank you. So I'll second that motion.
Sprinkler head.
Director?
I just wanted to point out, Councillor Mattis, that you may also be wanting to consider removing 4.3 as well. That's a new fee for standpipe, fire department connection, and private hydrant. It was sort of added in line with 4.2 as a new fee.
Thank you for that, Director. I did see it, and I had no problems with it.
Okay.
That's good. Councillor Bentamila, did you have any follow-up questions?
No, I do not, but thank you for asking.
No other amendments, Council? Seeing no other comments or questions, so we have a motion that Council give first, second, and third reading.
No, actually, the motion, Your Worship,
Oh,
is
sorry.
that we remove the sprinkler head fee.
Okay, I thought we were going to do it as amended. Okay. So we moved in second that Council remove 4.2 sprinkler head fee of $2 from Amendment Bylaw 138301. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
So on that, then I would make the motion that council give first, second, and third reading to fees and charges amendment bylaw 138301 as amended, and that adoption of the fees and charges amendment bylaw be scheduled for October 13th, 2020 meeting.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Mattis. Councillor Schwarzenberger, any further comments, questions? Hearing none, I'll call the question then. Those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. Moving to correspondence. This correspondence report the corporate officer has attached. I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. This evening on the September 21st correspondence report, 2 items for Council's action. The first one is correspondence dated September 15th, 2020 from TELUS regarding prioritization of rural connectivity across Canada. They're requesting that Council send a letter to the Prime Minister Trudeau to request that the federal government prioritizes rural connectivity in the upcoming speech of the throne, which is scheduled for September 23rd. The recommendations are that Council may wish to direct staff to send the letter. There's a template provided by TELUS to the Government of Canada to prioritize, I can't say that tonight, rural connectivity, or Council may wish to receive and file.
Councillor Schwarzenberger.
Thank you, Worship. I'm definitely in favor, but I don't see that if we do this today, since the speech from the throne is 2 days away, that this is going to make any impact at all on the requirement. I think it's just too late. It's unfortunate that this didn't come forward 2 weeks ago, so I would move receive and file.
Second.
Seconded. Any other comments? I'll call the question then. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you. And the second piece for action this evening is correspondence dated September 15th from the City of New Westminster, Mayor Cote, regarding the resolution to support universal no-cost access to all prescription contraception available in BC under the Medical Services Plan. They're asking councils across British Columbia to send a supportive letter that speaks to the City of New Westminster's resolution regarding universal no-cost access to prescription contraception available in BC under the Medical Services Plan to the UBCM or the Premier, one of the two. Or you may receive and file.
Councillor Grace.
So as someone with a uterus, as mentioned in the And the letter, I would certainly support sending a letter of support.
Moved. Do I have a seconder?
Oh, I'll move it, yes.
I'll
Yeah,
second it.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I think I'm going to stay out of it.
Well, I would say it's beyond our purview, but it really doesn't matter whether we send the letter or not.
Yeah, if I may, Your Worship.
Yes.
Just on the male-female thing, if a male goes in for a vasectomy, it's completely covered under our medical services plan, so I don't see why prescription contraception shouldn't be covered as well.
Any further discussion? I'll call a question. Those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried.
Thank you. And the last piece for your information only, again, is correspondence from the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch regarding the repeal of cannabis retail store terms and conditions for non-medical cannabis retail stores. The policy is allowing licensee and applicants greater latitude in selecting business names and branding. And the resolution is that the above correspondence and the weekly mail correspondence be received.
I'll move receipt.
Moved.
Second.
Seconded. Call a question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving to reports. Fire Department activity report for August 2020.
I'll move receipt.
Move receipt. Councillor Schwarzenberger.
Second.
Seconded. Councillor Grace. Any further discussion, questions? Hearing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving to councillor reports. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thursday, September 10th, I virtually participated in She Rises, which was a women equity town hall. Friday, September 11th, the Open Public Space Committee workshop meeting. Tuesday, September 15th, I was on a conference call with Minister Mungal in regards for funding for our Grow Oliver coordinator. Thursday, September 17th was a conference call with Minister Robinson regarding funding for the Gallagher Lake Siphon project. Today's meetings, and that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Councillor Grace. Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Open Public Space meeting and the September 16th Okanagan Regional Library Board meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Ventimiglia.
Thank you, Your Worship. Overlaps with a lot of my fellow councillors. Friday, September the 11th, the Public Open Space Virtual Committee Workshop. Tuesday, September the 15th, the UBCM Minister meeting with the Minister of Jobs, Economic Development and Competitiveness, as described by Councillor Grace. Wednesday, the 16th, I sat in on a minister call with Director Knodel. That was with the Minister of Agriculture. Wednesday, the 17th, was Regional District Board and Committee meetings, as well as Hospital District. And we also had a minister meeting that morning with the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schwarzenberger.
Thank you, Your Worship. Friday, September 11th, the Public Open Space Committee meeting and today's meetings.
Thank you, Councillor Schwarzenberger. For me, September 9th, the Heritage Committee meeting. September 15th, I was also on the UBCM meeting with the Minister of Jobs, Economic Development and Competitiveness, and we talked about funding for the Grow Oliver coordinator. September 17th, the UBCM meeting with the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, talked about the Gallagher Lake Siphon repair funding and getting access to the $5 million in funding from the province in a timely manner so that we didn't have to do any short-term borrowing, or we could delay our borrowing as long as possible. And today I was at the MIABC Annual General Meeting virtually. The meeting was a virtual in conjunction with the UBCM convention. And that concludes my report. Upcoming meetings are October 13th, 2020, regular open council meeting. Acting mayor schedule for September, October, November is Councillor Ventimiglia. There's no public in attendance to comment. And I guess I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Councillor Schwarzenberger, Councillor Grace, call the question. Those in favor? We are adjourned. That's it. Thank you, Council.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.